background. I'm actually at Stanford right now. I'm at my alma mater. I didn't want to drive all the way back home from Levi's Stadium and get there and look at my watch. Nice watch, by the way. I didn't want to look at my watch and say, hey, it's way too late to go live. Not everybody will be able to tune in for 49ers Intel. So what do? It's a beautiful evening. We do 49ers Intel from outside here at Stanford. I mean, if you want to take a look at the palm trees, the lighting's not as good that way. The quad is just over there. So we're going to go walk over to the quad in a little bit. Maybe when we're done, when more people are on the show, we can take a look at Stanford's quad and the oval on the live. But for now, we can talk 49ers Intel here from a bench at Stanford. No Brandon Aiyuk, no Jauan Jennings. I think in the headline I put, what's the actual deal with Jauan Jennings? This is what people need to understand. You've been misled by the internet with Jauan Jennings. This happened a couple months ago. Jauan Jennings received a tender from the 49ers. As a restricted free agent, Jauan Jennings has the ability to negotiate with other teams, but because the 49ers slapped a tender on him, a second-round tender, they're going to have right of first refusal. So what does that mean? Well, it means that they have offered Jauan Jennings a $4.9 million contract for this 2024 season. 1 year, $4.9 million. Jennings is free to shop around elsewhere. If he gets an offer for more than that from elsewhere, the 49ers will have a chance to match that offer, similar to how the Detroit Lions matched the offer that the 49ers gave their tight end, Brock Wright. And in that case, the 49ers will keep Jauan Jennings. Now, no other team has offered Jauan Jennings a longer-term contract. I think it stands to reason that Jauan wants a longer-term deal with the 49ers. He was really excited when that RFA tender came through from the 49ers. He was so excited that he posted the actual tender, the offer, on his Instagram. And when that happened, a lot of people mistakenly reported that Jauan Jennings had signed his tender. There's a difference between getting the offer letter and actually signing the offer letter. So he hadn't signed the offer letter yet. Right now, I would presume that Jauan Jennings and his camp are talking to the 49ers about a potential long-term extension. I'm not sure if the 49ers are in position financially to want to give that long-term extension, at least as big of an extension as Jauan Jennings might want. There's several factors at play here. One of them is, okay, 1 year deal. There's obviously a chance of injury. Jennings is a very physical player. His stock right now, I think, has never been higher. He just, came off of a Super Bowl in which he threw a touchdown and he caught a touchdown pass from Brock Purdy. He's known as one of the most physical receivers in the league. He's known as the type of guy that you want on your team that you don't want to play against. So his stock is really high right now. He wants some longer term security than just 1 year, $4.9 million, I would think. I don't have this confirmed, but I would think that's what Jauan Jennings wants. The problem for him is that as a restricted free agent, unless there's another team that swoops in and raises the price for the 49ers, he doesn't have any recourse. His only recourse relies on other teams potentially swooping in and raising the price. Now, it did happen with Brock Wright, the Detroit Lions tight end. The Lions offered Brock Wright an even smaller tender. I believe it was $2.9 million. It was the original round tender. And the 49ers said, hey, wait, we offer you $12 million over 3 years. The Lions thought about it, and before the deadline to match, they decided to match. So the 49ers essentially negotiated a pay raise for the Detroit Lions tight end Brock Wright. Will somebody do that for Jauan Jennings? I don't know. But right now, Jauan Jennings, I think that the most likely scenario, and he's using a little bit of the leverage that he does have and not showing up to OTAs, if this is indeed the thinking behind this, we don't have that confirmed. I'm not going to be somebody that reports a player's thought process that's not confirmed, but I'm looking at the strategy here, and I think that the thinking is, okay, he's working on trying to secure a long-term deal, and he can't even practice until he signs the tender. So he either needs a long-term deal signed or he needs to sign the tender before he takes the practice field for the 49ers. So he's not out at OTAs right now. Doesn't make sense for the 49ers to give Jauan Jennings a longer-term contract. I think it probably even, ensure lower cap hits throughout both of the next 2 years if they give him a 3-year deal with void years on it. But that receiver room is in a big state of potential turnover over the course of the next few years right now. So I think the 49ers want to keep all their options open. I don't think that they want to hand out more guaranteed money than they've already given out. They just drafted Ricky Pearsall. They just drafted Jacob Cowing, who missed practice today. We don't have the exact reason on that. But they also have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk under contract. Obviously, Aiyuk only under contract through this year. That negotiation is ongoing. Aiyuk also wasn't at OTAs. They also have the Brock Purdy contract to do probably next off season. So as you can see, there's a ton of moving pieces. The 49ers obviously don't have all too much room under this salary cap and projected future years salary cap. So they've got to balance everything, and they've got to project how the financial Tetris is going to work surrounding Brock Purdy, assuming they do pay him, which is why I think they would rather keep as much money free in 2025 and beyond. Awarding Jauan Jennings a long-term deal right now would inevitably take a bite out of 2025 space, because I think that he would want some kind of guarantee, some kind of secure beyond just 2024, because with the tender that the 49ers have already offered in 2024, they have already offered $4.9 million this year. So Jennings may actually want more, which is not surprising. So we'll see how it turns out. But basically, the situation has been ongoing for months. People just didn't realize it because they are victims of a false report that Jauan Jennings had signed his tender. And he hadn't yet signed his tender. So we'll see how this is all resolved, if it's resolved with a longer-term deal or if he ultimately signs his tender and gets out there on the practice field. I mentioned in the instant reaction video that Ricky Pearsall, even though he hasn't signed his rookie contract, is out there, but it's different for rookies. They could sign a waiver and get out onto the practice field. Nick Bosa was around. That's what my article is going to be about tomorrow. Bosa, in 2019, his rookie season, was out at OTAs, and he practiced once, and then in his second practice, he strained his hamstring. So they shut him down for OTAs. In 2020, there was no offseason program. Got axed. NFL axed all offseason programs in 2020. In 2021, Bosa was rehabbing from his torn ACL. 2022 was the only year since Bosa's rookie year that he started OTAs healthy and not in a contract negotiation. And that's the year that he just stayed behind in Florida, showed up, worked out with Joey Bosa, but then showed up for mandatory veteran minicamp. And it's important to remember that these OTAs are voluntary. They're not mandatory. So in 2022, Bosa theoretically could have been at OTAs. He wasn't. He showed up to mandatory veteran minicamp. And then in 2023, he obviously was working on his contract, or Brian Ayrault, his agent, was working on his contract. He was away from the facility until mandatory minicamp, and then he held out of training camp. So the fact that Bosa is at OTAs now is significant because it's not usual. And I think that the 49ers are happy to have a veteran pillar on the defensive side of the ball present, because you don't have Brandon Aiyuk and Jauan Jennings there on the offensive side of the ball right now. If you're the 49ers, you are a team that is obviously in win now mode, but there is a ton of, I don't want to say drama, but there are moving pieces that the 49ers are dealing with on a season in, season out basis. For example, and we'll go through some of the players that were missing today, and I'm going to tie this back into Bosa's presence at OTAs. For example, George Kittle and Charvarius Ward, both missing practice. Both of those guys recovering from core muscle surgery. Talanoa Hufanga coming off of a torn ACL. He's rehabbing off on the side. Jake Brendel, he was added to the injury list today. Knee arthritis. 49ers starting center, probably not going to take part in OTAs. Drake Jackson, he had knee surgery a few months ago, probably not going to take part in OTAs. Cam Latu, still not ready to go, even after the knee surgery last year. So he wasn't taking part today. And then Jacob Cowing, I mentioned the rookie, he wasn't out there. So you go through that list of players who weren't around, and then you add the fact that Trent Williams wasn't there. That was expected. He's not going to show up to OTAs. I don't think he ever has, not for the 49ers. You add in the fact that Jauan Jennings wasn't there, Brandon Aiyuk wasn't there. There's a lot of moving pieces, right, for the 49ers right now. They're not in the mode of getting everybody together and marching out to play week 1 against the New York Jets yet. It's still only May, so that's okay. But still, to cross the bridge between now and that week 1 game against the New York Jets, Monday Night Football, to open the season, when you want to have all the troops ready to go, ready for the battle that is the regular season, you want to bridge that gap. And having Nick Bosa around does help bridge that gap. One way that potentially has happened is that Nick Bosa, I think fairly recently today, he said, reached out to Brandon Aiyuk and told him to keep his head up and to stay positive throughout what probably is going to be a difficult contract negotiation process. The 49ers want to maximize financial efficiency. They don't want to give away free money to Brandon Aiyuk. They want to handle this negotiation as shrewdly as they've been able to handle the ones before it. If that is the case, this negotiation may end up lasting till July, maybe even beyond that. The 49ers actually hope that it doesn't last much beyond that because they would rather have Aiyuk at training camp. But that kind of stuff, if it takes too long, can have negative ripple effects on a team. I mean, we saw it with Bosa himself last year. We saw it with Deebo Samuel in 2022. So when you have a veteran pillar, not only at OTAs, but also in some sort of contact with Brandon Aiyuk, sharing some of his experience, that can only help keep a football team stable. And the 49ers want to stay as stable as possible. So Bosa at training camp, I think, is a nice boost for the 49ers. They're happy that they have the leader on that side of the ball. They're happy that they have Brock Purdy, obviously the QB, the leader on the other side of the ball. Bosa let it slip today. He said, I think Brock is going to stay the same guy even when he gets paid next year. It's very, very obvious that Brock Purdy's on the trajectory to earn $50 million plus. I mean, not even a question. If you had to pay Brock Purdy today, you still would have a smaller sample size, so you probably wouldn't be as comfortable if you're the 49ers. But if you have to pay him at this time next year after he puts up another great season, he could be a $60 million quarterback. $50 million is far in the rearview mirror after Jared Goff, an inferior quarterback to Brock Purdy, signed for $50 million. So we talk about the contract drama right now. No Brandon Aiyuk, no Jauan Jennings, potentially due to the RFA contract situation, the tender. We'll just think about what next year might hold. It's going to be mighty interesting because you talk about leaders being present at the offseason program. Kyle Shanahan thought it was important enough to give Nick Bosa a call and state the reasons why he thought he should be present this year, and Bosa agreed with them. Obviously, Bosa hadn't been present throughout this OTA stretch much in the past. But when you talk about leaders being present, I think next year the 49ers, they're probably going to want Brock Purdy present at the offseason program. And Brock Purdy is going to be due for a big new contract. So this is why it's such a fascinating time to follow the 49ers. Because all of these moving pieces, one after another, seem to hit our table. And we could discuss them one after another. There's never a month without something to talk about if you're discussing the 49ers. And then some things from the past come back around, like Trent Taylor today. You know, Trent still has some juice. 5'8", small receiver. Obviously, Trent was beleaguered by injuries over his first stint with the 49ers. Remember that people counted Trent Taylor out because of the injuries. They basically said that this guy's not a good player. He's not going to be a good receiver for the 49ers. But the reason behind that was that he was dealing with a bad back over the course of his time with San Francisco. I would say over the 2-3 final years with the 49ers, he was hampered by something. He showed in 2017 that when he's healthy, he can be a dependable slot guy. That he could be somebody especially dependable on punt returns. He never muffed a punt with the 49ers. Based on what I saw today at OTAs, Trent Taylor might still have something left to contribute. Now, it's going to be really hard to make the football team for the 49ers at that receiver position, assuming they take 6. Maybe they only take 5, but 6 max. I think that maybe the practice squad and a situation where Taylor is called up to be Feeling a punt returner, that might make the most sense if everybody stays healthy. But today on the practice field, I still saw the short area quickness that first made the 49ers draft Trent Taylor in the 5th round in 2017. I saw some good hands, and I saw presence out on the practice field. I saw presence from Ricky Pearsall. Now, Ricky worked against a couple different cornerbacks. He worked against Ambry Thomas, and one of the dirtiest routes of the day was Ricky Pearsall going out on the left sideline for what looked like it was going to be a deep pattern. And he just stopped on a dime and came back to the football, caught it from Brock Purdy for a gain of, 15, 20 yards. That was something. I was looking because I saw Pearsall take off. I'm standing on the sideline where the 49ers defense was standing. Pearsall's running right in front of me, and I start to see the throw leaving Brock Purdy's hand. I'm like, oh, well, he's going to go deep to Ricky Pearsall because Pearsall is going full head of steam down the sideline. Next thing I know is that the throw zips in there and hits Pearsall on the comeback. That's how quickly he was able to stop on a dime, and he created like 10 yards of separation in between him and Ambry Thomas. Pearsall beat Thomas a couple times today. He also had some matchups with Rock Ya-Sin, who's the 49ers veteran corner. And I thought that the most rousing play today that saw the most emotion out of everybody on the sideline, especially for the defense, was when Rock Ya-Sin broke up a pass. I believe it was from Brandon Allen intended for Ricky Pearsall along the sideline. It was a deep out pattern. It was a good physical pass breakup. And, I saw Rock Ya-Sin make that play. I saw Isaac Yiadom, the 49ers' other new veteran cornerback, picked up in free agency, make a play. We didn't see Charvarius Ward, as I had listed a little bit earlier. And to me, between Deommodore Lenoir, Rock Ya-Sin, and Isaac Yiadom, those are 3 really good-looking corners that the 49ers have that probably gives them the deepest corner room that they've had since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch got here. Ambry Thomas is going to have to fight to make the team. Samuel Womack is going to have to fight to make the team. We'll see where Darrell Luter Jr. falls in the pecking order, but he still has a little bit longer on his rookie deal, so he might have more of a leash for the 49ers. But they have a lot of good players in that secondary to where Brandon Staley's got to be really happy. And I'll tell you what, Brandon Staley, new 49ers assistant head coach, assigned to the defense, he was extremely thrilled after that Rock Ya-Sin pass breakup. He was there on the sideline with the 49ers players. He would always whisper something to the DBs after a play. And it seems like he's working more with the secondary than anybody else now. Nick Bosa said that he hadn't met Brandon Staley yet. So to me, it looks like that focus is on the DBs because he really was going after it on the sideline with those guys. I mean, it looked like I still remember OTAs in 2018 where Richard Sherman was still recovering from the Achilles tear that he suffered with Seattle in 2017. Then he signed with the 49ers. Richard Sherman was like a really vocal coach on the 49ers sideline, coaching up the DBs. That was Brandon Staley's role today. He was talking to the DBs. He was right there with the players on the sideline. We're going to have a chance to chat with Brandon Staley tomorrow to get a little bit more into things. Talk about the quarterbacks today. Purdy obviously got the lion's share of the reps. I have my notes here on what the QBs did. Now, remember that Brock Purdy and all the quarterbacks today got almost exclusively 7-on-7 work. So it wasn't 11-on-11. The offensive and defensive lines were off on the side. This was more about pass game stuff. You don't hand the ball off in 7-on-7. So, and most of the time in 7-on-7 work, there is going to be a short option that's open. The test is deciding when to push the ball downfield and when not to push the ball downfield. Kyle Shanahan, when he looks at the tape, is going to decide whether the quarterback's decisions in the practice today were the appropriate ones. So it's really hard for us to tell if the decisions were sound or not. But I can tell you that Purdy was crisp on all the short passes. There were a couple deep balls that went incomplete. They were well covered, though. I mean, the double, triple coverage, so it was just a harmless throw that wasn't anywhere near the coverage. And then there was a deep pass from Brock Purdy today that was impressive, and it was a touchdown to Trent Taylor. And I talked about it on the instant reaction. It was the roll left, the flip the hips to the right, throw back across the field, the no, yes kind of play that Brock Purdy is. I think he's earned the trust of Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers staff to be able to run that. You don't want just any Joe Schmo running roll left, flip your hips, throw back across the field type of play. But Brock Purdy made that work many times this past season. He made it work against Cincinnati. He made it work on the Brandon Aiyuk touchdown against Jacksonville. And he made it work in practice today to Trent Taylor. Second team reps in the 7-on-7 work today were split between Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. The 49ers' fourth quarterback is Tanner Mordecai, who saw most of the action at the rookie minicamp. But it's clear that the number 2 battle, right now at least, is between Dobbs and Brandon Allen. It's funny because Dobbs is wearing number 5. That's the number that Trey Lance wore last year. So it's the second straight year that a number 5 has been in competition to be Brock Purdy's backup. Last year, funny enough, during this time, people did not acknowledge, or they didn't realize because they didn't know how to properly cover the team, that Trey Lance was actually competing to be Brock Purdy's backup. People said, oh no, Trey Lance, he's competing to be the starter. No, he wasn't. He was competing with Sam Darnold to be the backup. He lost that battle. Sam Darnold won, and the 49ers traded Trey Lance. Anyway, this year I think it's clear to everybody that number 5, Josh Dobbs, is competing to be Brock Purdy's backup. I thought Dobbs had a little bit more zip on his throws today than Brandon Allen, but that's just naked eye kind of stuff. And again, I am not able, nor is anybody able from the sideline, to diagnose where the throw should have gone and where it did go. That's all stuff that Kyle Shanahan is going to look at on the coach's tape, and the competition, by the way, has not even begun. We are just seeing Allen and Dobbs get acclimated with what the 49ers are going to run offensively, especially Dobbs, since he hasn't been with the system yet. And that's going to set the table for training camp. So last year, everybody overreacted to OTAs because Purdy wasn't around, and they saw a lot of Lance and they saw a lot of Darnold, and they saw that there was going to be They thought there was going to be jockeying one way or the other. There wasn't going to be jockeying one way or the other. OTAs was about setting the table for training camp when the actual competition did start, and that's how it's going to work at the quarterback position this time. I did think that the 49ers' machinations along the offensive line were interesting because there is no Jake Brendel right now. He's got the knee arthritis. So the 49ers had John Feliciano play center. Feliciano has played center before for the New York Giants, a full season at center. Now, Brendel didn't have the best year last year. I don't know how his knee's going to hold up. They say he's going to miss OTAs. I would still pencil him in right now as the 49ers' probable starter at that center position. But remember that Feliciano can play that position. And remember that Feliciano provided an instant upgrade for the 49ers at right guard last season when he took over for Spencer Burford. So what's it going to be? Are the 49ers going to put Feliciano into the right guard position again this season? Or are they going to slot him into center while Jake Brendel is hurt? And will this Jake Brendel injury be something that persists? Knee arthritis is something that doesn't just go away. Where is Feliciano going to plug into that offensive line? Today we saw him at center, and we saw Dominic Pooney, the rookie third-round pick, take snaps at right guard with the second team. They're working Pooney at guard first, even though they think that he can potentially play tackle as well for the 49ers, because the more acute need for this offensive line is at guard. Jarrett Kingston, the 6th-round pick actually for the second team, was at right tackle today. But I still think that Kingston, they're considering more as a guard because of the arm length, because of just the skill set that he brings to the table, more of an interior lineman at the NFL level. So the 49ers are clearly focusing their new rookie resources on the interior line. I think they're counting on Colton McKivitz to make a jump in his second full year of starting. They also think that pressure up the middle is more damaging than anything to Brock Purdy, because if McKivitz gives up a pressure on the right side, Purdy can see it. It's further away from him, right? So with that pressure is coming from the exterior, you could see Brock Purdy has the quickness and has the wherewithal, has the potential quick release to get rid of the football. What he can't defeat is the pressure right up the middle, and that's where the 49ers truly, truly struggled last year, especially in the Super Bowl, especially on the fateful play where Spencer Burford did not block Chris Jones. So, to me, it makes total sense that they're focusing on the interior specifically. That's what the first order of business for the 49ers is as far as improving their offensive line. And I'm going to track this. I mean, it's way too early to make sweeping judgments on anything, but with Brendel out right now and Feliciano at center and Dominic Pooney working with that second team at right guard, we can see where the 49ers are targeting their efforts, and we're going to see how it evolves over the course of this offseason. One more thing, Deebo Samuel looks like he's in really good shape. Really, really good shape. I mean, he was doing all his boxing. He was doing his it seems that Deebo gets creative with his off-season training regimen every year. And this year, boxing is tough. Anybody who's boxed, you'll know that that's something that's going to get you in good physical condition. But we did see him shirtless. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan saw him shirtless. Deebo was sending all those shirtless pictures to Kyle Shanahan last year to show him how good of shape he was in. I think we saw how good of condition Deebo was in before OTA started. And on the field today, he was moving really, really well. And I think that's something that the 49ers can be very excited about. So that's the intel through practice today. Mike, you can let me know what else I need to tell people. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a walk around Stanford and the Oval and the quad here as we talk about the 49ers. But those of you who have stuck through this, you are rewarded with some fun views before sunset overtakes the Bay Area. So let's flip this around. There we go. It's fun doing 49ers intel from different spots. During the season, I go back. I have so much work. I have to go back to the studio. The studio's fun. We use the studio to catch up on things, but I think that in the off season, especially with the days being longer right now, we're nearing that summer solstice. Why not go to cool spots and do 49ers intel with some nice backdrops? You're about to see Hoover Tower at Stanford. That's where the bells are chiming from as we walk out to the main oval here. Go ahead and give me your questions about the 49ers and we'll talk. I'm ready for all of them. I have a good evening to me and Mike. Good evening to everybody. There it is. That's Hoover Tower. There's the moon. The moon has been prominent in our lives the last couple days. Stanford University. Showcasing the place I went to school. It's on the way home for me from Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. Get to make my way back to San Francisco through this wonderful place. Anything to share on Christian McCaffrey? All I know is he's getting married soon. I would not assume that Christian McCaffrey's absence is a contractual dispute because he's getting married soon. I'm not saying that it isn't. We just don't have any information. I just wouldn't assume anything. And by the way, this is where Christian McCaffrey went to school. Or at Stanford, so it's a good place to talk about Christian McCaffrey. But I know that he's getting married to his fiancée, Olivia Colpo, out in Rhode Island, and I know that that is coming at some point soon, so I would not assume that he is missing because of a contractual issue. That being said, I will be the first to tell you that I think that Christian McCaffrey might deserve a little bit more money from the 49ers. It's at $12 million per year, and he's one of the most valuable offensive players in all of football. He was an MVP candidate this past year. So Christian, coming from the roots here at Stanford, has turned into one of the NFL's best players, and he wasn't at OTAs today. Somebody asked me if I'm excited for the wide receiver battle. Well, I think that the wide receiver DB battle at training camp is going to be something to watch because the 49ers are deep at both of those positions. 49ers are I think you could even argue that the 49ers have the deepest collection of receivers and defensive backs that they've had in this entire Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. Just as they're morphing into a pass-first team. 109 pass plays, 77 run plays called in the postseason for the 49ers, thanks to the emergence of Brock Purdy and obviously the development of this receiving core, which includes Ricky Pearsall. I just thought that he looked like a vet today. I thought Ricky Pearsall was really, really impressive. The way that he moves, we already knew that, but it didn't look like he was swimming in the playbook. It looked like he knew what he was doing as far as route running out there. And I said, well, we need to see him operate against some veterans. He was operating against Ambry Thomas and Rock Yassin, and I think that he acquitted himself well. What I think about Dre Greenlaw's timeline, well, he'll probably miss at least the first 4 games, which is mandatory on the PUP list. This is a big S for Stanford. Flowers make the big S here on the oval. So you look toward the quad and the church, and then you can pan this way, and that's Palm Drive. Pretty scenic here, right? Not bad at all at Stanford. Strawberry reacts as he's glad there's not a QB controversy this year. The last 2 years were exhausting. I agree. They were pretty tiresome. But people will always find a way to make a quarterback controversy. I just think that's part of how things work in the NFL, especially with the 49ers. What improvements can Brock Purdy make this offseason? You just develop a better command of the offense, better command of where blitzers might be coming from. Could cover for his offensive line a little bit that way. You just get better, right? You get a little bit more accurate. No quarterback has ever gone through a season with a lot of attempts and 100% completion rate. So you could obviously continue working toward perfection without ever fully reaching it. All right, I'm ready for a couple more questions, and then I'm calling it a night here from Stanford. How cool is it that Bosa showed up? I wrote about that. It's going to be out in The Athletic tomorrow morning. Am I excited to travel in the cold this year? Yeah, I can't wait to see people jumping on tables in Buffalo. It's going to be fun. How about one more question for the win? I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll flip it around. You guys can look at Palm Drive. Could Shanahan introduce a 5 wide receiver formation? Yeah, sure. Especially with Pearsall in the mix now. All the coaches are talking tomorrow. All the assistant coaches should be good for the 49ers. So I'll be back at OTAs at that point. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye from Stanford. Everybody take care. This has been 49ers Intel from another special spot.